First, I want to welcome everyone. This is the annual meeting for the Watershed Alliance. We're required to have one every year, and we were incorporated in 1999. So I wasn't around for all of them, but I was a past president. I was off the board, and now I'm the president again. So I've been around for a lot of them, but they've evolved over the years. So this year we decided to expand it to Zoom since we know how to do that now. And also we decided we'd have an interesting speaker. And the reason for that is that one of the main missions of the Watershed Alliance is to educate our members and the public on things that are important regarding water resources. So tonight, our featured speaker, which we'll get to shortly after the short business meeting, is Heidi Biggs, and she works for Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, and she's going to talk about the Integrated Water Quality Report. And from a Watershed Alliance of Adams County perspective, that's important because a large part of our mission is to assure the water quality here in Adams County. We have a water testing program that has been active over the years, and it started out in around the year 2000, and it was started out as the Environmental Alliance for Senior Involvement. And since senior involvement was key to the program, it was run through the Office of Aging. And it ran through the Office of Aging, and I participated back then in the year 2000, even though I wasn't a senior, as did, and yeah, we've had dedicated volunteers over the years, but we got to the point where the Watershed Alliance wanted to do more. And so we worked with the Office of Aging in 2019, and they agreed to put the responsibility with the Watershed Alliance. So we've been running the program. And when we did that, we first thing we did is one of the first things is we tried to answer the question, why are we testing and what are we going to test? And part of that is just a continuum of some of the testing that was done under the Office of Aging, but we decided two things were our reasons to test. One is we tried to get a good handle on what the nutrients are that are exiting the county. So, and the nutrients of concern as defined by EPA and Chesapeake Bay Foundation, et cetera, there's three of them: nitrates, phosphates, and sediment. So we have not figured out the sediment testing yet, but we are testing for nitrates and phosphates. So we're doing that on 5 streams. Let me read them so I don't miss one: Marsh Creek, Rock Creek, Toms Creek, Middle Creek, and Conawago Creeks. And so there are some other opportunities there to test. And the other rationale for testing is testing areas where we have environmental concerns. And one of those is Swamp Creek, which runs into Middle Creek up by Strawberry Hill Nature Preserve. Within the last 2 years has been upgraded to an exceptional value stream, which means it deserves the highest protection that the state can afford. And we thought it would be good to keep an eye on that. So we are testing that for not only nitrates and phosphates, but alkalinity. And I'm not sure if there's any other testing we're doing there yet, but we're going to test that for more than just excess nutrients. I will, at this point, ask Cliff Frost to introduce Heidi. Cliff is a participant in the Master Watersheds program. And one of the values of that is he gets to hear all types of interesting presentations. And he's the one that suggested Heidi might be good for presenting at our annual meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over to Cliff.
Yeah, hi. So I'll make the introduction short. Heidi Biggs has a degree in biology with concentrations in environmental and marine biology. She's been with DEP Water Quality Division since 2006. She She started out in the water quality standards section where she developed water quality criteria and implemented Clean Water Act regulations at industrial facilities, mainly power plants. In 2016, she joined the assessment section and has been charged with coordinating the data solicitation process, reviewing external data outside of the normal DEP sampling, and other activities relating to the production of the Integrated Water Quality Report. She also volunteers on the Environmental Advisory Council in Mechanicsburg Borough in her spare time. And I saw her give a very enlightening presentation on the Integrated Water Quality Report and asked her to join us. So here she is. Thank you, Heidi.
That I've been doing a lot of presentations in the last year. And actually it's something that I have really enjoyed doing. It really started, I think my first presentation like this was right before, it was, the end of last February. So it was right before pandemic happened. And so that was an in-person one, and everything since then has been virtual, which is still more fun than sitting on my computer and doing a lot of data stuff at home all the time. But so I am really happy to be here. I'm super excited to just be with volunteers because I feel like it really encourages my heart to know that there's people out there who care that aren't even being paid for to care. So that is always good for me to just interact with you guys and just hear the work that you've been doing. And I'll just say, when I get to the mapping applications, if I'm talking and it seems like what you're seeing is not matching up, sometimes there's a little bit of a lag we've noticed through Zoom. So if that happens, someone can stop me and I can try to slow down a little bit, but it might help to turn off your video because it seems to be sometimes like it might be a bandwidth thing. So, all right, so I'm gonna get going here. I work in DEP Water Quality Division, so that's essentially the headquarters at DEP. We do statewide work, so we do work all across the state. We have several sections. We develop water quality standards. Cliff had mentioned my bio. That's really where I started out at DEP, developing water quality criteria, which I'll talk about in a minute. We have a section that develops all the protocols that actually go step by step on how and what we do when we go out in the field and collect data. We develop and we implement the methods that help us figure out if streams are healthy or not healthy. And then we develop TMDLs. And I don't know if you're all familiar with TMDLs. I would think you are, because you probably talk about the Bay TMDL and the WIP, the Watershed Implementation Plans. But for anybody who's not, a TMDL is total maximum daily load. And it's kind of like a pollution diet for a stream to be able to get a healthy or an unhealthy stream back to healthy. Okay, so I just mentioned water quality standards, and I know this is maybe, looks like a lot for this time of day, but I wanted to just tell you really briefly that water quality standards include water quality criteria, protected uses, and an anti-degradation policy. So there's 3 parts of that. And the reason I have this slide up is just to show you, if you went to PA and you looked for chapter 93 to look at the Pennsylvania water quality standards, this is the first page. This is what you would see. And it's a fairly large book after that, but just wanted to give you an idea. When I say the word water quality standards, this is what I'm talking about. So again, water quality standards, the 3 parts. The one is protected uses.
Heidi,
Yes.
just a sec. I don't know if anyone else is this way. I'm only seeing a slide that was the first slide that went up.
Oh, you know why? Because I paused it when I was trying to. Yeah, I'm glad you said something. I paused it and now I don't see why. Okay, I stopped sharing, so I'm going to try this again. Okay, how about now? Can you see now?
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Now
So
we're on protected uses. Yeah.
good. Okay, well, I'll back up a slide if it will let me. So I just said what did you miss? Okay, so some of that's jumble in the beginning. You heard me, those were the words that went along with it. I just mentioned water quality standards. If you want to see that codified and regulation, this is where you go, and that's what it looks like. So the 3 parts again: protected uses, water quality criteria, and anti-degradation policy. Protected uses include aquatic life use. So that would be, you might have heard warm water fishes, cold water fishes, high quality and exceptional value. Pat just mentioned how, which was it, Swamp Creek has been, now it's been upgraded to an exceptional quality, exceptional value stream, and that is an aquatic life use. So a protected use is basically what we expect the stream to be able to do. So I kind of look at it as it's like it's potential, or basically like if a stream is meeting its protected use, it's living up to its potential to support aquatic life use, or it's living up to its potential to support potable water supply, which would be, you know, can it go into a drinking plant and not have to have too much work done to be able to make it drinkable. Recreational use is basically boating and swimming. Is it safe to boat and swim? Fish consumption would be, you know, are the fish safe to eat? So those are the protected uses. So you're going to hear a lot about uses. So I kind of want to just spend a little time there. Hopefully that's clearer than mud about what that means. I feel like I'm flying now because of all the problems in the beginning make me feel like I got to rush, but water quality criteria. So that's the other part. So again, water quality standards are protected uses, criteria, anti-degradation policy. So if you would go into that book that I showed you earlier, the water quality standards, you would see some criteria. I just took a screenshot of a couple of the criteria for iron and manganese, nitrate plus nitrate. These are kind of some of the simplest criteria that we have, but these are basically, if the chemistry in a water body meets these criteria, we expect that the uses are protected. So I don't know if my cursor works on this, but these critical uses, basically, if, for example, if we collect water quality data and that data show that criteria is met, then we expect that these uses are protected, that they're met. And we wouldn't expect to see any problems with the biology because these are aquatic life uses, cold water fishes and warm water fishes. So that's essentially what a criteria is. It's sort of a number, like a number goal of what we should be seeing in the chemistry in a stream. Okay, so that was a little bit of a crash course on water quality standards, and it took me years and years to understand a lot of that stuff. So if none of that sunk in, don't feel bad at all. If anything you remember today is that the integrated water quality report, which is what I'm really here to share about, is a report about the status of our waters. We look at the health of our waters and we write a report on it. Status of our waters, okay? And in order to report on the status, we need to be able to do assessments. So an assessment is essentially an evaluation of water quality. So this answers the question, this evaluation answers the question, is this water body attaining or supporting the protected uses, or is it impaired? So attaining or supporting protected uses would be sort of like this stream is healthy, impaired would be not healthy. If the stream is impaired, we have to figure out what the source of that impairment is and what is the cause of that impairment. So a source might be agriculture, a cause might be nutrients, and those often go together. Same with source might be agriculture and cause could be sedimentation. And I bring those out because I've already looked at Adams County, and that's a lot of what we see for our impairments there. So I'm sure that's not shocking to hear, just given the land use there. But so that's essentially what an assessment is. We're answering the question, is it attaining or impaired? And if it is impaired, we have to figure out what that source and cause is. And so we're using, well, I'll go to the next slide because that's what I'm going to talk about. And also just the reason we do this report is it's actually it's a requirement that states have for EPA. It's required in the Clean Water Act to do this report. And so that's the core function of the group that I work in right now, is to work on this report. And you probably all know, but we have over 85,000 miles of streams. So it's not a small job. And we have to do this every 2 years, is to provide a new report. Okay, so We just talked about water quality assessments. Those are the evaluations of water quality. In order to make those evaluations, we need water quality data. Most of the data that we use is collected by DEP. A lot of the data comes from the biologists that we have in our 6 regional offices. Some of the data comes from the biologists that work in my division. And besides that, we also look for and review existing and readily available data that's submitted to DEP. And do want to talk about that in a little bit more detail later, because you're all collecting data. So you might want to know that we are using outside data that's not collected by us. And you know, we can figure out if it's a good fit for your data is you know, for us to be able to use it to make a water quality assessment. So, okay, so the types of data that we use for assessments, we use macroinvertebrate surveys, we use chemistry samples, we use field chemistry. So the chemistry that you're actually collecting when you go out and you use test kits and you use field monitors. We do physical habitat surveys, look at the habitat in an area, look at the riparian buffer. We do bacteria samples, that's for recreational use to see if it's basically swimmable. We do fish tissue samples and fish population surveys. So I'm going to take, I have more slides, but I'm going to take a break here, especially if we run out of time. And I'm going to move to our website. So I close this out. And I've already opened some of this. So again, if things start lagging, let me know. So I just talked about what the integrated report is. I'm going to tell you how to find it. So if you go to the DEP website, the easiest way to do is honestly is to go into the search and just write water quality or integrated report, and you'll probably find it. But you can also navigate to businesses, water, and then you kind of have to follow this rabbit hole. It's Bureau of Clean Water, water quality, and then you'll find the integrated water quality report page. And if you can't find it, we can send it. I'm sure Cliff could send out a link if it might even be in his article that he wrote in last month's newsletter. Okay, so when you're in the integrated water quality report page, you'll see that there's a couple different years here available. The 2020 is our most recent one. It's just been approved by EPA. We started using this digital format in 2018, so this is really our second round. We were doing a little bit of the digital stuff in 2016, but before that, we had a massive stack of papers, essentially, because this is, again, a report of 85,000 miles of streams and whether or not they're meeting all of these protected uses. So we've upgraded a little bit, I think, but you're going to want to go to the 2020 unless you're interested in looking at the other years as well. Okay, and just to show you what there is on this page is, first you're going to see the integrated report, and this is basically what we call the narrative portion of the old report. So this is going to be it's the meat and potatoes of the integrated report, but I also want to show you this mapping application. This tool is actually going to be something that you might all be interested in working on your own, because you're going to be able to really look at your local streams and see what the status of those streams are. So I'm going to start with the integrated report. And actually, before I forget to tell you, if you keep scrolling down this page, there are demos here. So if you're gonna play around with the report and the viewer, I would highly recommend using these demos. They're each about 10 minutes long. It's a YouTube video, and it's going to show you everything you need to know for the most part to be able to operate these applications. So I think that is really well done. I'm not going to be able to be as thorough in everything tonight, so definitely recommend those. So I'm just going to click on the integrated report, which I don't know why I did because I already had it open, and this will take longer. But just to give you a little bit of an idea what it looks like. I'm not going to have time to go through all this or take the time to do it, but you can see the headings up here. These are just the parts that it's broken into section 303D and 305B. Those are sections under the Clean Water Act. I had mentioned that we have an obligation under the Clean Water Act to submit this data, and that's just what those numbers are. If you scroll down, I'm just going to point this out too, is when we put together an integrated report, there's a public comment period. So anyone is able to go and look at it and see if there's anything that you want to comment on. The comment period is obviously closed for this last one, but we'll be doing the 2022 report, which hopefully will come out this time next year if all goes well. And there'll be a comment period, next spring to next summer. And there is a tool that you can use to submit comments electronically. And there's also address here if you want to do that in writing. But you can just scroll down through this, or you can click on these sections and you'll jump down to those areas. But there's a lot of information in here. Some of the information I already shared on the PowerPoint, and I was just trying to keep it a little simple by sharing the PowerPoint, but maybe you'll learn better through this. But I think what's really neat about this application is there are like layers and layers and layers of data or layers of information. So if you're just interested in learning a little bit, you can scroll down and you can read things and you can get a little bit. If you want to get more, there's layers and layers of it. There's data that's available through it. You just have to click on things. There's maps embedded. I'm not going to pull these up because they take a little while to load. Just statistics about our state. This talks about the categories in the integrated report. This, I'm not going to really go through it a lot right now, but this will become important if you are interested in looking at the streams in your area and you want to understand what the categories are. It's basically, for example, and this was in Cliff's article in the newsletter last month too. He talked a little bit about the Adams County streams and what categories they're in. But so category 1 is sort of the best of the best. These are the water bodies that are attaining all of those uses. They're attaining aquatic life, potable water supply, recreational use, and fish consumption. And I'm not going to pull this map up because it takes a little while, but there's not very many statewide. There really aren't a lot that are attaining all of the uses yet. Let's be positive, yet, not attaining it. So there's a lot of categories here. 5 is impaired and needing a TMDL. That might be relevant to you too, but just want you to know that's there if you want to learn about that. But you can pull up maps. You can look at spreadsheets. There's a lot of data that's just embedded into this. And then here are some of the changes if you want to find a place will show you quickly the changes from last integrated report to this integrated report. Those are there as well. Okay, and I'm just going to show you again too. There's again data that is embedded into this application. If you ever see one of these little symbols here, you can actually click on that and you can print it. You can download the data that's in that chart. So lots of links. Some of these will link you to PDFs, things that you can learn a little bit more about our process. Again, maps. I'm not going to open this map because I'm going to do the mapping application in a few minutes. But if you look at this, this is the category 5 map. So this is waters that are impaired for 1 or more uses. So you see what our state looks like, as there's a lot of red there because there's a lot of impairments. These are the ones that are needing a TMDL. I'm not going to go over everything, but restoration priorities. I'm going to just call this out real quick just because, and again, this was in the newsletter, that article, or I probably would not have realized it, but there, if you open this spreadsheet, there's actually a stream that's listed under DEP's restoration priorities. And basically these, and this might be a little anecdotal, but this is kind of how I understand that it worked. So states have been working for a long time on determining whether streams are attaining or impaired. And then when they're impaired, generally, we have to write a TMDL for it. And so I think for years and years and years, we were just writing TMDLs, writing, and didn't really have any time to really implement them or to see that they were working. And so I think there was a little bit of a shift in the process, and EPA had come out and said they want us to prioritize what streams that we really need to make sure we write a TMDL for, and we really need to see that those TMDLs are followed, because we think that they probably have a really good chance of being restored. And so I know one of the ways we kind of narrowed the field statewide is to look for streams that have sedimentation in agriculture listed as the cause and the source. And I'm forgetting exactly now what the stream is. Somebody can speak up if they want. Which stream is on it? Is it the tributaries to, or headwaters to the Conewago, I think, including Opossum?
I think it was Possum Creek was the
Okay.
one where there was restoration opportunities, I think.
Okay, yeah, and so I looked on that, on this, I guess it went too long for me to open this. I looked on this and I noticed that, and just based on what I know about the restoration priorities, and actually you can even read about how that all happened. So, you know, my little Zoom thing gets in the way, so it's hard for me to, I'm probably missing it, but the little Zoom box keeps getting in the way. So I'm trying to show you, and I don't know if I'm able to find it here. But anyway, so it's listed there. Another thing I've heard too, sort of anecdotally, is that, well, partially anecdotally and partially from reading I've done, is that our regional offices had always also identified streams where they knew that there was a good, solid volunteer base, or there's organizations like yours who are available in that area and who are active and, you know, can be part of the fix when it comes down to it. I don't know if that was determined to be the case for the headwaters Conewago Creek where you guys are, but so I just wanted to pull that one out. That's what that is all about as far as I know. Okay, keep scrolling down and trying to think if there's anything else that I really wanted to pull out. This graphic will give you an idea of the status, which I think is a pretty powerful chart, just how it is. You get an idea of how many miles that we have assessed and what we have to assess yet. And you can look at the leading causes of leading sources of impairment and the leading causes of impairment too, which I think, you know, later when you have some time, you want to come back and see that. I think I would definitely encourage you to kind of understand some of these a little bit better. If you want to learn more about macroinvertebrates, this is a really great story map that some of my coworkers put together, and there is opportunity to pull out our data set for macroinvertebrates at the end of that. We have all this information for leaks as well. We have a little bit of information about groundwater. This talks about the control programs that we have at DEP and our restoration programs that we have DEP. These just have a PDF attached, and then there's kind of a short write-up if you just want to learn a little bit about different programs at DEP and what we're doing. Okay, and then we get into the measuring progress section. There's an area here where we're just looking at data from our water quality network sites, which are sites that have been collecting data month after month for years and years and years. So we have some trend data. A lot of the data in this part of the state is on the Susquehanna or on the major tributaries to the Susquehanna, and a lot of this is nutrient data. Just let you know that's available. And I did want to point this out to you specifically. Turtle Creek Restoration Project, you might be interested in looking at that. It's a story map. So it's sort of similar to what I'm showing you here. This is considered sort of like a story map where you can read the stories and see the pictures. But this is a stream that was impaired for sedimentation in an agricultural area, and it had a active involvement from you know, from watershed groups and conservation district and that sort of thing, and farmers who are interested in making some changes. So that might be something you might be interested in looking at, just given that you do have a stream that's on that restoration priorities list. Okay, so that's basically, that's as fast as you would ever want to go through it. That's way too fast to go through that, but there's a lot of information. I just kind of wanted to show you that a little bit. Again, it's going to remind you at the end again, if you want to stay informed and you want to participate, that's how this works. And you can also, again, comment on the next integrated report when we get there. And so I want to go back to this integrated water quality report website 2020, and we're going to look at the mapping application a little bit. the viewer. And again, I'll remind you, check out that YouTube video. Keep trying to move my Zoom screen here so it's not in the way. Okay, so when this pops open, you can just say, okay, it's some informational. If you are familiar at all with GIS, this might be a little bit intuitive. If not, this will seem really new. But this is a pretty neat application that will help you get a lot of information about the streams in your area. Specifically, most of it's geared towards the integrated report and basically what the status is. Is it impaired? Is it attaining? For the aquatic life use or the potable water supply use? And then if it is impaired, what are the sources and what are the causes? So some basic stuff here is you can search for, you're supposed to be able to search for a county. I was talking to Cliff and he said and I've checked it too, if you tried doing Adams County, it comes up with all the other ones in the country, but PA doesn't come up. I'm not sure why that is, but you could put your township in, you could put town in or an address, or you can just zoom in with these buttons. You can also, I have like the roller ball on my mouse, which makes it easier. You can change the imagery in the back. So this is the topographic background, but if you want to see streets or aerial, that's available too. So I'm just gonna zoom right on into Adams County because I already know where that is. Okay. And so this introduction here is gonna give you some information. The layers, this is important. Here, actually, you notice once we zoomed in that we see all these colors. If you're zoomed out a little bit, you don't see the red and the green. And if you notice these layers, when you check these, that means that those layers are activated. When they're kind of grayed out, that's because you're zoomed out too far. So as I zoom back in, right now we have the aquatic life impaired layer and the aquatic life supporting layer. And if you check that out, it's kind of what you would expect. The aquatic life impaired is red and the aquatic life supporting is green. I'm going to zoom even further. You can click on a stream and you're going to get various information. Now, all this information is just going to be about aquatic life because that's the only one I have activated, but I'll just go ahead and activate all these other ones just so we have everything. Maybe that's the only one that it's impaired for, but let me just do that again. Just click somewhere again. So you can get a little bit of information. Some of this might not mean anything to you and maybe it doesn't need to. I'll give you a couple tips here. Some of these, when you see this assessment GIS key, this is actually the date when it was assessed. So it's actually 2006, June 6th of 2006. And sometimes the date might be below here anyway. But so some of the important information is that this is impaired. It's impaired for aquatic life. This is the category, it's on 4A. This is the name of the stream. This is how long this part of the stream that we looked at and determined was impaired. This is the designated uses, it's warm water fishes. What else is important here? It's been listed as impaired since 2008. The source is agriculture, the cause is siltation, the context is sediment. So there is a TMDL study. So there's lots of information on here. I don't know what's all going to be relevant to you or if it's just going to be interesting for you. If you ever see this little arrow up there, that means there's more information on it. So when I clicked on it, I found that there is also there's a recreational impairment on it as well. So, okay, so that's an idea of how you can just kind of pan around, find your stream, if you'd like to do it that way, and try to get an understanding of what layers are available, what information is available. So we have all the information available for lakes as well. You can change the boundaries. There is, right now the county boundaries are on, that's kind of the default. You can use the hydrologic unit code 8, which is kind of a watershed way of dividing things, also a municipality, so you can activate any of those layers as well. Okay, And then there's also a way where you can find a stream that you might be interested in. So I wrote down some of the streams you were talking about earlier. So for example, let's see, if you didn't know if Little Marsh Creek was impaired or attaining, we could look that up this way. Let's see. So we have to actually pick all streams. Messed that up. Little Marsh Creek. Okay, and press search and let's see. Okay, so oh, that's not good. That one backfired on me a little bit because that's not the right Little Marsh Creek. Okay, let's try another one. How about Swamp Creek? No, Swamp Creek was. How about Stevens Run? Or I'm wondering if, yeah, I guess I could have found the right Adams one, but I'm trying to find an easy one to share with you. So if at first you don't succeed, right? Okay, Stevens Run. This is Adams County. Yay, found it. Okay, so it found Stevens Run. It says it's impaired. If I click on this, it's going to bring me right to it. So you can click on it here and you can get all that information, but it actually has it available to you here in this, in sort of the spreadsheet view. And why you see so many of these is because when we do these evaluations, we do it on a very high resolution. So there are, a couple miles at a time where we decide whether it's impaired or not, what it's impaired for. And then in some cases, it might be on different lists depending on if it's attaining or not, or what the sources and the causes are. So you can actually export this as a spreadsheet if you want to manipulate the data in a little bit easier way. So that's just one way you can use this tool. Let's take another example. And I know it's getting almost 8 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap this up so that if anybody has any questions. And I didn't even get to the data solicitation part, so maybe you'll all have to have me back for another time if we want to talk about what data you're collecting and how we can use it. So let's see if we have, let's see, let's look for, let's see. I had some ideas and now I kind of forget I'm here. Okay, trying to think of a stream that we know is already impaired. We'll just go for Stevens. Go ahead.
Why don't you try Rock Creek?
Rock Creek, okay, yes. See, I had some ideas and then I lost them in my brain somewhere. Okay, so that, actually, you know what? I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do this a different way. I'm going to just say, since we kind of already looked at an impaired stream that way, I'm gonna say, I'm interested in seeing streams that are impaired for agriculture and the cause is siltation. And if you don't want to, if you're not interested in seeing the entire state, you can zoom in. So you're seeing Adams County. This isn't going to be perfect because you're either going to be looking at too many or too few. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. And right here, you can apply the spatial filter. So you can use current map extent. So it's however you're viewed. It will only search in just the area that you're seeing in your screen. So now what I'm doing is I am searching for all the streams that are impaired for agriculture and siltation in Adams County, essentially. Now you could export this to Excel and you could clean out the ones that are going to show up that are in probably New York County and maybe some Cumberland and whatever else I have in that extent there. But I just wanted to show you. Now if you go back to that YouTube video, you'll be able to figure out how to do this. And I'll just tell you, if you start playing around with this and you're and it tells you you did something wrong, you just got to go back and make sure that you have some of these things filled in. Sometimes it wants you to have more things filled in than you do. And there is one other way you can look for things too. So I know oh yeah, I can close that out because we're done with that. You can, if I'm not really good at this, but if you want to see all the streams impaired, you can drop down and look at some of these other ones. Let's just do recreational use for. You can use one of these features, and I'll just show you what it does, and then you can figure out what the other ones do on your own. But basically we can, I'm not really good at this, but we can kind of trace the outline of Adams County. And you might want to redo it a couple times until you get it just right. This might even have some kind of help with you when you're talking about the streams that you're looking at as they exit the state. I don't know, I haven't just thinking of that off the top of my head, but okay, so I kind of traced that. And I'm going to search for the recreational impaired. So as you see, it highlights the ones that, oops, I did something funny there. Okay, I don't know why I highlighted something by accident, but whenever I click on one of these in the spreadsheet view, it actually zooms right to there. I don't know why this isn't letting me move it. It's getting mad at me now. It's too late for it to do. It's saying, hey, this is after hours. What are you doing? But that's a way you can search as well. If you just want to look right in your county, again, you can zoom to things, you can click on them, you can get the information. I'm going to stop talking about this in case anybody has some questions. Unless you all really want to stay on and you want me to talk a little bit about the external data process, I can, or I can come back another time. It's up to you. You tell me what you want me to do.
I think we have time for talking about external data, don't we, Pat?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if there's someone that's not interested, we won't be offended if you leave the meeting.
Okay.
But I would like to hear it, since we do have a considerable amount of data we've collected over the last 2 decades. So.
Okay. Does anybody have any quick questions for me on what I shared already with the integrated report? Other than I'm probably not going to be able to answer any major questions about the this mapping application right now, or take it through too many.
I do have one quick question. The one thing you showed was when the data was collected, and I think the example you used was in the county. It was 2006.
Mm-hmm.
So should I infer from that it hasn't been reassessed since 2006?
Yeah, that's a great question, and yeah, that's the case. When I said earlier that we make these assessments every 2 years, or we report on our assessments, we are definitely not in the ability. We definitely don't have the resources or the ability to assess 85,500 miles of streams plus lakes for all those uses every 2 years. So a lot of our assessments are on the older side. You'll see some in there that are probably even as old as 1999. So
that raises the question for me: if it was impaired in 2006, would you agree that things have improved since 2006 in general?
Oh, in general, I don't think I can make that generalization.
Okay, well, I'm looking at SRBC reports and things like that. So
yes. Yeah,
it actually may or may not be impaired because we haven't gone back to reassess it.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of, that's one of the things where we do have, a desire to want to get back and reassess those. We're going a much slower than basically our goal, or even what EPA would like us to do. And that's how all the states are. We just don't have the resources, and we have a lot of miles. But 2006 that's older, but we have worse, I'm going to say, and I would hope that things would have improved. In some cases, we probably have streams out there that are still marked as attaining, and they're actually have, probably changes of land use. And obviously in some areas, like my area here, I feel like there's just constant development and more urbanization. So I know there's probably some streams going downhill we haven't been able to get back to as well. So, and that actually is a good segue into existing data or existing and readily available data. But does anybody else have another question or any more questions about that? Okay, I will take silence as a no. Let me switch seats again. It didn't save my spot, so.
Heidi, I have a question. How does the report relate to the deliverables under the Chesapeake Bay program?
Onto the deliverables. I'm not at the level that I really probably have a good understanding of that. Honestly, I don't know if my boss would either, but maybe he does. I don't exactly know. I feel like we've started talking to the Chesapeake Bay office a little bit more about some of these things and figuring out, maybe we're figuring out the answer to that question, but I don't really know. I mean, I assume that our data on impairments, I mean, it's all connected. So we decide if it's impaired and if it needs a TMDL to get back to being restored. And, you know, as far as the Bay TMDL, like that is all, you know, ours is just a finer resolution of what the goal is. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but I don't really know how that's connected. But I can do some homework and figure it out. Or if your county conservation districts, if you're in communication with them, they might have a better sense of that. And at any rate, something I should probably understand. So I'm going to make a note of it. Okay, so I'm going to try to make this kind of quick, but we talked about the data that we use for assessments. And just as sort of a reminder, data for DEP, our data quality is really, really critical to us when we're making decisions. We have a couple of things in place to help us make sure that the data we use is high quality and make sure whatever data we are reviewing that we're making use of it, even if it's not something that we can use to actually make an assessment for purposes of the integrated report. But remember, like when we're making decisions, it's an official legal decision. We have to have really high standards for ourselves when we are collecting data because it's basically, you know, we have to be able to legally defend any decisions that we make. So it can be a little bit contentious. So I was already talking about this a little bit, but legal defensibility of our data, we need to be able to defend it if we would have to go to court for anything. A lot of times our assessment decisions are used in TMDLs, which obviously can be contentious. They're used in permitting, which can be contentious. So we always have to make sure that the data that we collect or any of the data we utilize is a very high quality. We need to be consistent statewide. So we need to make sure that we are making our assessments in a way that it looks the same if we're making them in Adams County, if we're making them in Erie County. And that is why we have standard monitoring protocols that we use. And also, if you just think about it, accuracy and precision are really important when we're talking about data and making data and using data for official decision making. Because this data, if we're thinking about numbers, the numbers of the data we collect from the in-stream, it needs to be compared to benchmarks, or if you've heard the term IBI score with macroinvertebrates, or criteria, like I showed you before, the iron criteria, or the manganese criteria. We need to be able to compare the numbers from the data in the field to the numbers that are codified in our regulations, and to be able to say, yes, this meets it, no, or no, this doesn't meet it. So it's really important that we are very confident in the data that we collect and the data that we use in the integrated report and other decision making as well. So one of the things I mentioned, we have a tiered data acceptance policy. There is a lot of information that's going to be on this page, but I'll just kind of I'll just tell you the main point. The main point is that whenever we get data from outside sources, and this is essentially has become my job, so I'm still a little bit new at it, but it's essentially what we're doing is we're looking at the data and we're determining which one of these tiers it fits in. So tier one would be, we're saying that all of this data has value. It might just not be the value, or it might just not be valuable to us for the integrated report, but it could be valuable for other reasons. So especially if you've been collecting data for a long time, you know, there's value in that to be able to look at trends, but we might not be able to use that for the integrated report depending on whether or not you've had a quality assurance plan, you know, that entire time, or whether or not you're following DEP collection protocols, which I would assume you're not, because why would you be unless your intent was to submit the data to us for us to use. So it's still sticking with whatever your goal is for collecting your data. It needs to answer your questions, and it's sort of a benefit, or it's just kind of a bonus to us if we're able to use it. So I know that was a little bit all over the place, but I just wanted to show you the difference between those. So tier 1 and tier 2, the differences here are in tier 1, you have a study plan. So you have a study plan in place, so you know it's consistent, even especially with volunteers. If you have various people collecting the data over time, we want to make sure that people are sticking to a study plan so that there's value there. But maybe you don't have a quality assurance plan. And tier 2 would be that you do have a quality assurance plan and you are following a sampling plan, but maybe you're not following DEP collection protocols, which is still totally fine, and there is still value with that in other ways, but it might not be for the integrated report. And then tier 3 data, this is pretty rigorous. This is not something that we expect from everyone. We're getting it from a few groups, SRBC, some county conservation districts that have been working for years to make sure they know our protocols and you know, having the approved quality assurance plans and everything in place. So I'll kind of go through what that looks like if you are interested in getting to that degree. But I guess I'll just encourage you again that that's not for everyone and doesn't need to be the goal of your data. If you have data, we still would love to see it. We'd still love to figure out, you know, maybe what the place is for it, or we might be able to use it in other evaluations that we're doing that might just not be this decision making the integrated report, if that makes any sense at all. So again, back to that tier 3 data, just to kind of draw this out a little bit more. This is the data that we would get from an outside source and that we would use to make an assessment in the integrated report. The sampling plan would need to follow our methodology. It would need to be an approved quality assurance plan. So either approved by us, like you know, me or somebody in my division, or somebody else at DEP. It might be, you know, I talked to some conservation districts last month. In some cases, they're already talking to the Chesapeake Bay program, and they might have something that, you know, has been approved through them, or it might be, you know, they might have a grant with EPA and they need to get a quality assurance plan approved by them, and so that would count too. And then the third hoop to jump through would be that any collectors would have to be audited by biologists in our division. So that would be, you know, setting up, and that would be after you've made sure that the first 2 things are done. But the third thing is resource intensive, at least for our division. But someone would come out and make sure that that the sampling that you're doing is actually following all the methodology that you've already been following, that we have put together. So as far as that methodology, all of our sampling protocols are found in this monitoring book. The monitoring book and the assessment book are both on our website on the water quality page. The monitoring book contains all the field protocols to collect data, the physical, the bacterial, the chemical, the biological. And the assessment book is the methods that describe how we take that data and how we turn it into an assessment decision. And if you're curious about quality assurance plans, I was talking to Cliff yesterday, and it sounds like some of you are talking to Alarm and working on quality assurance plans. And so I'm sure that would probably sync with what I'm showing you here. They probably have some really great resources. But again, in order for it to be tier 3 data, we would have to approve, or someone would have to approve that quality assurance plan. But these are some resources that are available to help you develop a quality assurance plan. And the audits, that depends on what kind of data you're collecting, but basically anything you want to do, if you want to submit data to us, we would probably be interested in auditing you. It could be the chemistry samples if you're submitting to a lab. the field collections. I don't know if we typically do field audits on field chemistry data. I have to think about that because I don't know if we typically make assessments on just like one grab sample or something of, but you're going back and forth, or you're going back to the same stream, the area routinely. So that might be a little different. I have to think about that. Macroinvertebrates, if you're interested in collecting, sorting macroinvertebrates, there's a couple parts of that process. There's collecting, there's subsampling, and then there's the identification. A lot of times the identification that would be done by a contracted taxonomist. And then continuous in-stream monitoring, so having some kind of sonde out or a mayfly logger. That's something that Stroud's doing right now is their work. They have these plans for these continuous in-stream monitors called mayfly loggers. So something like that, that would be something that we'd also have to audit. So that might be a little bit more detail than you need about that, depending on where you're going to go. But I guess I needed to tell you, because once I start, I can't stop talking too much. It's my style. And so if you do get to the point where you have data and you want to send it to us, there is a data submission document on our website. There's a form, there's instructions, and the deadline would be September 30th of the odd year. So that would be the September 30th of 2021 for consideration of the next integrated report. And then likewise, if you're not ready by that point, 2 years later would be the next deadline. And just so you know, without going back to that website, I have a couple pictures here just to show you. If you go back to the integrated water quality report site, there is a link here for existing and readily available data. And this is where that document is that has the form and the instructions. Whoops. And this is a couple pages out of that to see what it, just so you know what it looks like. So, all right, any questions on that?
Yeah, I guess no questions. It looks very rigorous though. And as you mentioned, we are working with alarm. Yeah, my quick assessment is we're probably tier 1, but working hard to upgrade.
Yeah, and I don't mean to, and part of talking about those tiers, I don't mean to devalue any of the data, because I think again, what matters is what your goal is and what your plan is for. I mean, and I know there's a lot of people collecting data that don't know exactly why they're doing it, but in a way, it's like one of those things. It's like, it's kind of like investing money, like when you're, they tell you to start when you're young, because you're like, well, I don't know. It just seems like you got time on your side. So if you start sampling, even if you don't know what your goal is, but you just keep sampling, it might seem like wasted time or wasted energy, but at the end of the day, like you have this long set of data. Not everybody has that. Not everybody has a long-term set of data. That's kind of hard to come by. So I think that no matter what, there's value in that. And even some of the newer stuff that you're doing, I think there's value in it. And if you know what your goal is, that's great. And if you think that there's something, now you know what our process is and what we use, you submit, if it's worth the effort for you, could submit it to us. And we can look at it and we can say, yeah, maybe we can't use this for the integrated report, but there are other things that we're working on in our division. There's, some people who are working on looking at trends and seeing how things are changing over time. And so there's definitely still value for it. But if that's the case and you feel like it's not worth the work to get it to us, I totally understand that too.
So Heidi, I have a question, which is, do you know if DEP has, say, areas where they feel, where you feel behind and would like some help from local groups? I mean, for example, is there a watershed or stream in Adams County that would be valuable to you if we were to gather data on? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, and actually, I'm so glad you said that, because that was really the segue I was trying to make earlier on, and then I got caught up in the presentation and forgot to make that segue. But if what I tell volunteers a lot is, if you are interested in, if you are monitoring but you're not quite sure what why you're monitoring or what to use it for, and you think you kind of want to gear it towards our use, and you want to I don't know, you want to make a difference in that way is probably the easiest way to say it. The easiest way to figure out what is our priority would be to look at how old the assessments are.
That's why this week I'm using my power as majority leader to make sure the Senate will vote on Senator Hirono's COVID-19.
Somebody's got a phone call came in.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So, Pat had asked.
No, I can't seem to find you to turn it off.
I can't hear it anymore. Okay. So Pat had asked about the one assessment that I pulled up that was from 2006. So if you were, especially if you had some money or some monitoring equipment and you wanted to figure out, where should we focus next? And you look at some of those older assessments, those might be a way to prioritize what we're interested in seeing. And even if it wasn't tier 3 data, I think we would still be interested on seeing some data. If there's an older assessment there and you have a feeling that something has changed, or, it says impaired, but you think it's improving, or it says it's attaining, but you think it's going downhill because of whatever has changed in the land use of the area around that, that might be, that might be how you can help us. And I don't want anyone to ever think that they need to completely do this on their own. If you have a goal of getting some data to us, just reach out to me and let's talk about it, and let me look at your sampling plan and give you some input. Or if you're thinking about prioritizing one of these areas and you kind of want to show that you think something has changed, or maybe even that nothing has changed, but you think this data is old and you could give us some value by kind of confirming it to us, I'd be happy to talk about the specifics with somebody too. Does that help? Does that kind of make sense?
It does. The assessment dates tend to be all very old.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit, we could almost, using that criteria, we could pick something at random, but.
There you go. Well, that's fine too. When you first asked the question, you're like, is there anywhere you want us to prioritize? I'm like, have you heard of Pennsylvania? Because we could use some help. Part of the problem is that I'm echoing to myself. Sorry, that's very distracting. Part of the reason it does take us so long is to make assessments is because we do such a thorough and rigorous job, and we also look on a very high resolution. So we're looking at stream segments, not just whole watersheds. We're looking at a stream and a tributary, and we're trying to make these assessments on a very high resolution basis. So it takes us a while. So so if they're all 2006 or earlier, just take your pick. I'm sure we could use it.
Yeah, I don't want to. We are getting. I'm not sure why we're getting echoes. I'm getting echoes too now. But the echoes throw me off.
Yeah.
But if we had tier 1 data, for example, but we use that as a way of trying to prioritize where DEP would do assessments in the county.
Yep, that's absolutely. If there's something, and that's part of the point I wanted to get across that I probably didn't. If you collect data and it seems to suggest something different than what the assessment says that's on the books, we'd love to see that data. It could help us prioritize when we, where we send a regional biologist next.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've got a question about how this relates to Chesapeake. If the Bay people say that Pennsylvania's not doing its job cleaning up the water that's going down there, and the assessments from here are, the data's old, how does that kind of thing match up? How do you know what's happening now in water that's flowing out of, in this case, Adams County?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't really have a good answer for that because it is, we need more resources. We need to be able to get back faster to the stream than we are. We've asked for more resources, and I think EPA wants us to get back more often, but it's just, I wish I remembered. I think they want us to make a reassessment every 15 years, which that sounds like a long time, but I think that's kind of the goal. So so 2006 actually isn't that old if you think about it. That's just kind of, that's like your roof that just is about to need replaced kind of thing, you know. But I think we're reassessing. I think our last estimate was something like once in 67 years, and that's not actually how long it's taking. It's just that couple of years because we're slow because of resources and getting our data into the system because we had new systems. But at any rate, we're not doing a great job because we haven't, you know, we started doing a lot of the assessments in probably the late 90s. And I don't think we've been back a second time hardly anywhere for aquatic life use anyway. So we have a lot of work to do there. But if you do see something older than 2006, I would definitely prioritize that.
Okay, I'm going to step in here. I think we are over by 20 some minutes, so and I think we've probably taken enough of Heidi's time. Unless
my kids are in bed, I'm free now.
Okay, well, we'll keep on going then. No, I think we're probably at a point where it might be good to wrap it up. Unless there's a burning question out there. Hearing none, I think we will just wrap it up. I want to thank you, Heidi, very much for your time. And I've actually looked at some of these documents, but I did learn a lot from your presentation, and it'll give me a better understanding when I go back in and dig into this integrated water quality report. So I really appreciate that. And as I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to say for the good of the cause.
Thank you, Heidi.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to gavel this annual meeting to close. And hope everybody getting their shots and being good out there and safe.